Welcome everybody to the June 27th School Curriculum Subcommittee. And we have a couple of big things to talk about. We're going to start off though with approval of the minutes on April 25th and on May 26th. I will move the minutes. Do I have a second?
All right, now second. Sorry.
Stephen, how do you vote?
I abstain.
Okay.
Yes.
I vote yes as well.
Sorry, I wasn't paying
Okay.
attention.
We are going to change the order a little bit, and we're going to do the K-8 World Language Program Review report first, if that's okay with everybody.
We won't have people expecting it later. Do we think any of the foreign language teachers?
We met with our world language teachers this morning.
Oh.
So I don't anticipate that there'll be any here for
Okay.
the report.
Okay, terrific.
I guess if somebody comes in later, we'll have to get them up to speed on whatever it
Well,
is.
we should, you'll see, right? If somebody comes in.
Somebody,
Absolutely, I'll let you know.
anybody on now?
No attendees on now, no, I'll let you know if there are.
So I think that we.
Okay, then I'm good.
Okay.
I just wanted to be respectful.
Yes, and they have had a copy of the report and Thomas has reviewed it with them as well.
Excellent.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Jody then.
Excellent. I'd like to introduce the committee to Thomas Sauer, who is from the Pearl organization affiliated with the University of Maryland. Thomas and his team conducted the review of our K-8 world language program over the course of the last school year. I can't believe it's the last school year already. And we're happy to have him here to go over his findings, the team's findings and the report, and answer any questions that you as the curriculum subcommittee may have. So with that, I'll hand it over to Thomas.
Thank you very much. Yeah, excited to share some of the findings. We did meet with some of district staff and some of the teachers already to share some previous findings, but then we got some additional data points. And so what you have now, what I'm sharing with you today really is our final report that we submitted. It was a pretty ambitious timeline. We did this, I think, in a record time. But thank you for the opportunity to see your program. You have certainly a very unique program. And hopefully what we can share with you will help you just strengthen your program and make it, you'll see this in your report, the term a signature program for Brookline. I will share just kind of like a summary information, but when you read the entire report, you have all the details, all the quotes from surveys and any kind of other data from observations and things like that in the report. So I'll just share the high level stuff so we can have a conversation about that. So let me share my screen.
So Thomas, what is your background?
Yep, I'll explain it.
Oh, okay.
I work for Professionals in Education, Advancing Research and Language Learning. We are a language research center funded by the U.S. Department of Education. There are 16 language resource centers around the country. They all have a different focus, and ours happens to be teacher effectiveness, professional development, and trying to find the answer to the super simple question, what will cause teachers to change their practice? And so we develop resources, materials for teachers. We do professional development. We research the impact of professional development, and we also provide program review services for school districts. Personally myself, if you want to know that, I've been a district supervisor for 2 large school districts. After that, I was an independent consultant and worked with educational organizations all around the country for almost 10 years. And I've been now at the University of Maryland for the last 7 years.
Thank you.
So to kind of start the report, we used 3 different frameworks to guide our work. One of them is from an organization called the National Association of District Supervisors of Foreign Languages. And they produced a framework called the Principles of Effective World Language Programs. We, of course, looked at the Massachusetts World Languages Curriculum Framework, which is fairly new still. And then we also used the Teacher Effectiveness for Language Learning Framework, which is a document that we have here at the University of Maryland, and that's been accepted kind of as a guiding standard for teacher effectiveness in language teaching. We used, well, here are some of the data points that we looked at. I had the opportunity to observe a variety of language classrooms. We did go to every school. We didn't see every single teacher, but almost every teacher. And we got a real nice snapshot of a variety of grade levels. We interviewed principals, district staff. We reviewed school schedules, curricula, lesson plans, student work. We had several focus groups with the world language teachers. And we also used surveys of the parents, the regular classroom teachers, and the world language teachers. And then since you had just done the middle school program review and the world language, I forgot what the number is, but I did a search one time. So term world language showed up there a lot. We obviously used that as an additional data point as well to not duplicate work that had already been done. So using all the data, we had 4 guiding questions. And they're really just, the big things when it comes to any kind of program. We looked at how the district used policies and resources. We looked at the curriculum. We looked at student growth. And we looked at how the programs are being implemented in terms of instruction. And so what I'll do, I will share, there's about, some have one, some have as many as 4 different findings in each of those sections, and then also an overarching recommendation. And then in the actual report, in addition to the recommendation, we also have some considerations of how to move forward with those recommendations. All right, so our first finding, or the first finding in the district policy or leadership section. So this is all about how does the district leadership, how does the school leadership make sure that the program is actually effective? And our first finding is that the language program has a stated vision, which of course is important. And not only does it have one, but it's also universally supported by the school committee. It's not surprising, but we didn't find anybody that doesn't like the world language program, doesn't think there's a need for the world language program. Everybody thinks it's important, which is pretty typical. So our findings there, you can see stakeholder support division for the K-8 world language program. The purpose is clear to many, but not everybody. So we all like the idea of having a program, but we're not quite sure how it fits into the bigger picture. And our biggest recommendation there is, this is what I just hinted at, is that if you really want that program to be the signature, or one of the signature programs of Brookline, you need to figure out how does it fit into the larger K-8 curriculum. Right now it's a program, and it's a program that's in the district, but it's not 100% clear to any of the stakeholders how it fits into the big picture. So we heard a lot of comments about like, it is great that we have it, but we don't know how it fits in with everything else that we're doing. And we're doing a lot of things in Brookline. The second finding in that section is that the program provides staff that allows for long sequence of articulated language courses, even when scheduled time or school space are limited. This is kind of probably one of your highlights of the program. I mean, you have invested significant resources to provide the staffing. Yes, there's some concerns on teacher schedules, but you're probably the envy of many other districts around the country to have teachers, to have classes offered at the levels that you do, because it means that students actually have the opportunity to gain high levels of language proficiency in one language for up to 13 years. There are school districts all around the country who keep talking about this and have been talking about this for a long time. How do you create these long sequences? And you do have them. Of course, within that, we do know that the instructional time varies from grade to grade, and there are some issues there. But I still would want to give you giant kudos for investing in having these long sequences of courses. And so then there's one more finding here that talks about that. Yes, we invest in the teachers, but they may not always have it at a classroom, or when they do, or they don't have, it could impact the effectiveness of their practice. The biggest recommendation here is that probably want to have some conversation about scheduling practices that actually allow teachers to excel in their jobs. And I know that's a hot button issue. I wish I could give you a golden answer, the secret answer to how to do this. There are no standards when it comes to elementary world language programs, and the schedule is always the one thing that either makes or breaks these programs. A lot of districts have started programs, have stopped programs, have restarted programs, and it always comes down to schedule. In our mind, the schedule is not the problem and the schedule is not the solution, right? It's the other things that will make or break the program. It's how does that fit in with everything else? How's the curriculum and how effective are your teachers? And then finding number 3, the program does not provide equitable access to world language learning experiences to all students. So that's something that we looked in, and it came pretty clear when talking to the parents and the teachers that we noticed students with IEPs or other special needs are frequently pulled out of world language classes to receive support services. There's no real systematic approach to providing differentiated language learning experiences for heritage language learners. And then no surprise, the recommendation there would be to develop a system that does meet the need of heritage native speakers or any other students who have been identified. And so what do we really mean by that? Let me, one second. I wanted to just read for that particular one some of the other considerations that we included in the written report. And that is just figuring out some kind of transparent process involving the students, involving the parents, involving all the teachers to determine the best time for their pullouts, whatever that happens to be. Right now, it appears that in many cases, world language is the default time for pullouts, and it could be maybe that's the one class that the student actually enjoys and looks forward to. And then the other one is also to kind of document how that process happens, because it's unclear often to the teachers, but we also heard from parents who don't know why their students are being pulled out of world language. And so it's not transparent to them. So it's just a matter of fixing some processes that perhaps exist, or some unspoken policies, and just make sure that everybody's aware of what those policies are. And then in our finding 4, and the final finding in this section, is that there are some program structures that actually impede communication among stakeholders to support world language learning. So this gets at some cultural issues, and you'll see this in almost every section, that there are some cultural problems. So the findings here are that world language teachers are often excluded from grade level communication, limiting their ability to support students' complete academic experience. What do we mean by that? I mean, it's literally that some of the world language teachers can't go to their grade level meetings. So they don't know everything else that's going on with that student. And sometimes that could have a huge impact on their experience in the world language class. The other one that I just mentioned as a consideration already, that they're not notified when students will be pulled out of these classes or when a student will return. There are no really shared expectations for K-5 classroom teachers to support world language instruction. And there are some misconceptions perhaps by both sides, by both the classroom teachers and the world language teachers. What is the role of the classroom teacher when it is Spanish time, when it is Chinese time? So that needs to be clarified. And while the district has shared some performance targets for the grade level, and they're posted on the Brookline website, there isn't really any other information about the program curriculum. So perhaps the parents have some misinformed or some misguided understandings of what their children are supposed to be able to or not supposed to be able to do at any point in the program. So our recommendation here is to empower all stakeholders to support language learner success through the collaboration, strategic communication, and you'll see in the report some very specific considerations about how you can get there, everything from how to communicate with parents. There's a couple other things there as well. That's the overall large section when it comes to district and school support for having an effective program. I think that might be a good time to pause on that one before we move on to the other section on assessment, curriculum, and instruction.
So when you see exemplary world language programs, K through 12, how are they different from what we provide? Is that too big a question?
It's a big question.
Maybe we can just frame that in the specific recommendation. How do they empower stakeholders? If I may, Helen.
Well, that isn't, I want to know what they look like.
So
Yeah. How are they different from ours?
can we have that at the end of this, maybe?
Yeah, sure.
I
Yeah,
If
let's
that's
go on. It's okay.
I wouldn't mind a little more specificity around what empowerment looks like.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I mean, in this case, it's a super easy answer. Let the parents know what's happening in the classes, right? And so in the example that we gave in the report is to, for example, create some kind of method. And I think we shared some pictures even in the report of some cards that can be sent home with parents of what the goals are for a particular unit. So that parents can actually say, oh, my kid is able to do X, Y, Z. Because what we don't want to do is have Brookline kids leave, say, oh, I had 8 years of Spanish in Brookline and I can't say anything.
So these are the ICANN cards.
Yeah, so exactly, that's the ICANN cards that we included there. That would be one example, right? Yeah. And then the other example was, if, for example, the expectations from the classroom teachers. Right now, the classroom teachers don't really know, and they may or may not support the idea of Spanish class happening. What would be great is that if the Spanish teachers and the classroom teachers actually communicate, and we'll get to that in the curriculum section as well, so that when the classroom teacher in the morning, they have calendar time and they go, oh, today, don't forget, today is our Spanish day. And in Spanish class today, they're going to go over the life cycle of a butterfly. Because remember when we talked about the life cycle of a butterfly last week in science, so that there's a connection that the classroom teacher knows what's happening in Spanish class, and there's natural connections that can be communicated, and that the classroom teachers can actually support what's happening, as opposed to like, oh, we got to stop now. Here comes the Spanish teacher again, which is kind of, counterproductive. All right, so the second one is all about curriculum. Yeah, that's right. It's the curriculum question. And we only have one finding, but it's a large one. Your curriculum is in varying format, which is really the big finding. So it varies in format, in focus, in content. And because of that, it's not, the best thing we could say was that it's not consistently in line with national state standards. It varies from grade level to grade level, even from language to language. So the good thing is, curriculum does identify what students will know and be able to at the end of each grade level. So that communication with parents should be fairly easy because you already have done that part. The elementary school Spanish curriculum is a series of topics that repeated across grade levels, which causes some confusions for parents and even for the teachers teaching it. The middle school Spanish curriculum is not aligned to the performance targets of the program. And we believe that's probably kind of a holdover from when we used to just have the middle school program. And then I believe there's one more. The curriculum does not consistently identify how students will demonstrate what they can do with what they know through formative and summative assessments. The curriculum does identify a variety of instructional strategies and resources, which the teachers do appreciate. So our biggest recommendation here is to develop a K-8 world language curricula around a series of backwards designed thematic units that identify unit performance objectives, performance assessments, and anchor lessons. And the other thing gets back to our very first recommendation here is to think about how does the world language curriculum support the curriculum in all the other content areas. It doesn't have to be a standalone thing. There's no law that says you must teach colors, numbers, food, animals, the weather in Spanish class in K-8. You could teach anything in a regular K-8 world language Spanish program, literally anything. Obviously, ideally, it would be appropriate to the age of the learner. and it would be connected to what's already happening in their regular classroom. Because then your world language program isn't just an add-on program, but it actually supports the regular curriculum. It will become a differentiation opportunity. It will become an extension opportunity. So if students didn't get the life cycle of a butterfly, then perhaps they get it because now they have another opportunity to learn it, and now they're learning it through the Spanish language. And vice versa, those native heritage speakers who perhaps didn't get the life cycle of a butterfly in their science class, they have an opportunity to acquire that knowledge when they're in Spanish class. So our suggestion would be to create those curriculum around themes, around topics that you find in your regular curriculum and make those natural connections. Right now, it's very repetitive. It's traditional topics, and it doesn't move the kids forward in their own proficiency levels. That's the only finding we have curriculum, because it's such a big thing. Yeah, questions about that, or do you want to keep going?
Well, so if they're not using standards, what are they using? They're just their own, I'm curious what that might be. Did they say?
It's not that they're not, it's just not consistent. Some of your middle school units actually are very, very good. There's, I would say, the middle school French, for example, are pretty exemplary, but it's just not consistent for all languages, for all grade levels. And it doesn't always take into account the progression. So for example, the middle school Spanish curriculum, students have already gone through 6 years of learning, and now they're getting 6th grade. And some of those curricular materials really look like, sound like, and in implementation also feel like they're designed for a first-year Spanish student. So
Right.
we're not,
Right, so they might have a curriculum for beginning Spanish.
even though it should be the 7th year for the majority of the students, right? So there's some alignment issues there. So the curriculum would be good if you started in 6th grade, but your students don't start in 6th grade. So yeah. So those kind of things. And then, yeah, you'll see some curricular connection in the following 2 sections as well. So I'll bring it back up.
So Brookline has quite a bit of what we call churn, where kids, come in later grades, leave, a lot of back and forth.
Yep.
How do the world language teachers deal with that?
Well, I can tell you what the statements that are posted on your website, they supposedly do. In practice, I'm not 100% sure. I think that's probably why the curriculum is written the way it is. Let me can I just pause that question for probably 2 minutes, because you're going to see it.
No problem.
To implementation of teaching, because you'll see exactly what they do, because you have identified a big problem, actually.
Sorry.
It's fine. It's a legitimate question, and you'll see it in just a second. Not in this next section, but in the final section when it comes to instruction. So this next section is all about assessment, right? Documenting growth of students' performance. How do we do that? Our first finding here is that the program hasn't developed a balanced assessment approach that offers multiple opportunities for ongoing formative summative assessments, as well as benchmark assessments. Sounds really bad. It's not necessarily that bad. You do have a process for collecting external benchmarks assessment, but it's limited to listening and speaking. We don't consistently monitor and document student language development by implementing formative and summative performance assessments across the 3 modes of communication. Modes of communication identified in your Massachusetts standards and international standards. And so we don't do that, again, across every area of language learning. We seem to be only focusing on listening and a little bit of speaking. So our first recommendation here is to expand the collection of summative internal and external data to include, well, I can't talk today, in order to document student growth and language learning. So we don't really know what your students can do when it comes to reading or writing, because either you're not assessing internally, and there's also no external data to support anything. So we don't know. So we need more data for that.
Can I'm sorry. So K through 2, though, I would hope that what they were doing is listening and speaking as opposed to reading, correct?
Yes, yep.
Okay. You
But
don't,
we don't do it in 5th grade. We don't do it in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade
Okay.
either.
all right. So that recommendation is specific to that upper grade.
I think a distinction is that for the Apple exam, we only assess students at the end of 8th grade.
I
do not-
see.
And we only assess listening and speaking at the end of 8th grade.
Uh-huh.
So we don't do all 4 domains ever. And then we don't do at any other time, any other domains, using the Apple exam.
Should start earlier.
I see. And is there a reason we don't?
Financial.
Yeah.
It's an expensive exam to administer. That's historically been, we haven't
Because it
adjusted,
costs money or because of time and.
It's quick.
it costs money, and we haven't increased the world language budget to accommodate an expanded exam. The
Is
same
there
is true at the high school.
purpose- So the purpose to do that would be to be able to know if you're teaching, the kids are learning what you're teaching. Correct. Is there other ways of doing it without this expensive exam?
Yes, but we're not doing that
Right.
either.
Okay, thank you.
That would take a lot of.
That's why it says internal, external, right? Obviously, internal doesn't cost you anything.
Yes, okay,
First
Okay.
recommendation, you'll see that in the considerations, but there would be some internal assessments and then external assessment. There's always a way to get around with any kind of budget, right? We don't need to assess every student. We're just using the external as benchmark. So we can benchmark random samples of kids. We don't need to assess every single kid if budget is an issue.
Mhm.
But you do want to do all skills, absolutely. Yeah.
okay.
The second finding here is that the program documents and reports student growth based on performance in world language class and external assessment. Like I said, you do that. And there's a process in place, super impressive, of analyzing student external data. But again, it's just in listening, speaking. But it's amazing to see what your staff has done with that. But then there's that next step, right? It's one thing to get the data, then what do you do with the data? And we couldn't find any evidence that we're actually using that data to make any kind of decisions about the program, decisions about the curriculum, decisions about schedules, decisions. It's just, we have it and we kind of sit on it and we look at our charts. But another, I think, truly exemplar of your program or a highlight of your program is that the program uses standards-based grading practice to provide feedback on student proficiency to students and parents. Again, a lot of programs are trying to figure that out. You guys are already doing it and you're doing a really good job with it, especially when it comes to educating the parents and communicating to the parents why we're doing it and how it works. So our recommendation here, obviously, is also the same thing as the other one, is to expand those external assessment opportunities in order to monitor student growth and to actually adjust the program if you find out that there's things not going well. And then the final one that was kind of a big one that we were asked by district staff to look at is see how close your students are to earning the seal of biliteracy during high school. And they're actually really close. There's a really strong foundation. You're getting some good results from the program, but right now there's no process in place to award the seal. I forgot the exact number, but if you look on the Massachusetts Department of Education website, I forgot how many, it's like 140 districts who are already offering or have a process for place for offering the seal of biliteracy, and Brookline is not one of them. So obviously our recommendation would be that you figure out policies and procedures to award the seal of biliteracy, because your students are well on their way. In fact, if anything, if you had a process in place, your students would be eligible to earn the seal probably earlier than anywhere else in the state of Massachusetts, because where your kids are now, when the time they graduate from or promote on from 8th grade, they're pretty close to where they need to be. Now, the other caveat is that, and you'll see that in the report, is that a lot of that growth happens in the middle school program. It doesn't happen in the elementary portion of the program. In fact, in some cases, your French teachers are able to get their kids to the same or higher levels than those students who have been in the Spanish portion of the program for many more years than the students in Spanish classes. So those were the 3 findings from the assessment.
Can I ask a question about the seal of biliteracy?
Mhm.
It sounds good, but what does it really do for the kid or for the, I mean, it looks nice for the system, but what does it do for the, I'm sorry.
No, it's a good
Okay,
question.
it's a good question.
It's the right question.
Now,
We do offer, advanced placement courses for every single language, I think. I'm pretty sure Spanish, certainly,
I'm not sure
French,
about Latin.
Yeah.
Latin, no,
I'm not sure.
we used to.
Yeah.
But,
That's
so,
beautiful.
that gives you college credit. What does this give you?
it is only a nice to have thing. There's nothing else attached to it.
Okay, I'm not gonna worry about
I
it.
think it does help us understand how effective the program is.
Yes.
When you look at your percentages here, you list a number of percentages. So you say students who studied Spanish K through 8 reached the intermediate range, as did 67% of students who began Spanish in the middle school. That gives us something. That gives us some data in a way,
Yes.
right?
It-
On page 30.
Next to that, the other thing it does, and it was, it wasn't just designed for students who are native speakers of English to learn another language, but it's also to celebrate and honor native speakers of other languages, which you do have in the district. So it's not just for those kids who are learning Spanish as a second language, Chinese as a second language, but it's also for students who come in speaking Portuguese, Italian, Swahili, whatever, in those districts do have the process in place. Those students are also able to earn the seal without having the language instruction. They'll have to, the process will include some language assessment, but then they are also able to have that seal of biliteracy on their high school diploma, because it's something that's attached to high school diploma. And certainly, if you are submitting that to as part of your college application to show that you have the seal of biliteracy, I would suspect your college application gets viewed differently than without it.
Good question.
Thomas, did you just make a comment comparing the French language proficiency to intermediate range with Spanish language just before this? Could you make that comment again?
Sure, let me actually look up directly so that
Because I thought I heard you say that, tell me if I misheard, that French students who study French through 8th grade have a better chance of reaching biliteracy,
better chance.
have a higher potential of reaching seal of biliteracy status, but I didn't see that borne out in the report.
Yeah, we had to look at that data. Here's the thing.
But I wouldn't mind hearing that comment again and just any data behind it, because it piqued my interest.
If I recall, and like I said, I'm only one part of member of the team, but if I recall, our conversations around that was that we were impressed with how high the French students were performing considering they're only in the program for 3 years compared to the Spanish students who've been in the program for 9 years. That would probably be the most accurate thing to say. Other than that, I would have to actually go back to the source data and see. And we haven't been to you too, if that's really interesting.
Thomas, I think what the committee is referring to is that second paragraph on page 32. I know you have the report.
Yep, thank you. 1 second.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right.
Do this, yeah.
Stephen, do you have the report?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
It's at page 32.
It's not more, it's just that there are 64% students who began French in middle school.
Well, the paragraph doesn't suggest what you said, so I'm wondering if there's additional data.
The way I interpret it is that students who start in 6th grade, because students at Driscoll start Spanish in 6th grade, students at other schools start French in 6th grade, they are earning quite a great deal of proficiency in 3 years. Whereas our students who are starting in kindergarten in Spanish, they're not, it's not a wide gap in their.
Yeah, that I completely understand.
Yeah.
And-
The assumption, right? The assumption would be that the student who've been in the Spanish program for 9 years should outperform those students significantly, but the students who've been there for 3 years. And it's directly connected to the curriculum, to the effectiveness of a teacher. Yeah, those are probably the biggest impacts.
Thomas,
can I throw one other question about there because it's this data piece? When you're talking about like where our students are in the middle school, one of the things you mentioned was that we're really only looking at a few domains.
Yep.
And so is that within the one domain we're looking at that we're moving towards that? Or is that because like we don't have a way to measure overall?
That is correct.
We have to be, I just want to make sure we clarify that.
Yeah, so when we're talking about reaching any kind of level, it's all we have is listening, speaking. So we don't
No,
know.
on the written and the reading, which are part of the seal by literacy.
So, maybe your Spanish students are amazing readers and amazing writers. I don't suspect so because I've seen your curriculum and I've seen the teaching, but we don't really know,
Well, isn't the other thing too, by learning a second language, a third language is much easier. And so therefore you have a heads up in terms of learning French, or in terms of Chinese might be a little bit different, but even there.
Yes, for sure.
Can I ask, is there more information that we can get from you on this point? Specifically, the extent to which our program is most effective at the middle school level?
Expect it to be.
Well, I think the key is we can't because we don't have common assessments until 8th grade.
I
So
see.
we can't differentiate progress at the end of 5th grade right now.
Well, how do we say that they're at intermediate level if we don't have some way of assessing them?
They're at a level in listening and speaking.
Right,
So we are assessing them on those two.
in 8th grade.
In 8th grade.
Well, we're,
Wait.
That-
But we are saying that students,
Students who start in 6th grade and go through 8th in 3 years in French
okay,
are getting similar levels of proficiency
As
to the
those who
students who start at kindergarten and go
Right.
through 8th, which means that, which means
It puts into question the impact of the K to
K
5,
to 5, yeah.
but we don't have enough data to make a claim about K
Well,
to
you can
5.
only know that if you did a double-blind study and you didn't provide K through 5.
What
And
if
then
the
see
students
what-
didn't
But
receive K
we,
through 5 in that
we know
language?
students who didn't receive treatment.
No, but they got a second language.
Sure.
no, I don't think Helen's point is correct. I think we
it's
still can make the, sorry, I think we could still question the efficacy of the K through 5 investment in world languages, right? I mean, if we're finding that K through 8 study of one language is roughly as effective as middle school study of that same language, why are we doubting that finding?
I would argue that you necessarily can't question the efficacy of the program, but you can question the effectiveness of the teachers, the effectiveness of the curriculum. Because
What's the difference?
that's not equal right now either.
Sorry, can you make that distinction?
I
again,
would
Mike?
jump to the conclusion because of the very limited data that you have, that, for example, K5 is not giving you the bang for your buck. Because the
The
real,
K5 program is currently constructed. It's not giving us enough bang for our buck, though.
correct, there are some structural problems in curriculum.
Right. Right. We certainly, given your report, we can improve it, given how many recommendations you've made. But it's currently constructed. It doesn't seem to be giving us the bang for our buck that 6 through 8 is giving us.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to establish.
Yep, no, that's good. That's correct, and that's not impossible, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to suggest that K
Okay.
through 5 world language learning is not as potentially effective as grade 6 through 8 language. And if that's what you're saying, Helen, I apologize.
That's why I thought where you were going.
Sorry, no.
I think there is a question that's probably somewhat of a distraction right now, but of like, what's the impact of switching languages? So a student that starts K5 Spanish switches to French for 3 years, maybe then switches to Japanese at the high school. Like, how does that compare to a student who really goes K to 12 in a single language? We didn't study high school, so we don't have the end of the road here. But there's that in our discussions with Thomas on this kind of in prep, that's an interesting question about the amount of choice we offer. A student's opportunity to switch back, kind of go back and forth is in the mix here.
Yeah, it's a unique aspect of your program that's not common across other K6, K8 world language programs. The majority of foreign language programs in the elementary schools who follow that model, they offer kids a true choice. You guys don't really offer a choice. It's more like you can either continue, or if you don't like it, you can try something else. The other model that is happening is when there's a true choice, the kids have a variety of choices, right? In most middle schools, you have the choice of French, German, Spanish, Japanese, whatever they happen to be having in the schools, in the district. Or the layering approach is the one that's happening in some schools, where you continue Spanish and you can add on a second language, or your third language, to layer onto it, but you don't stop the one you started first.
Wow. And that gets to, I think, the point, Helen, you were making, that it's easier to learn a third language if you've learned two.
And anecdotally, we definitely see that at the high school, where kids will take 2 languages that are not their native language. It's a small section, but it's available to them at the school.
And so in our schools, they have a choice in middle grades of a different language. So
Right.
they have at least
Right.
2 languages offered.
Continue or restart.
Right.
That's true in all our schools.
But it's
Yes.
not all do French, right?
Correct. At Driscoll, it's continue Chinese or pick up Spanish, and at Pierce, it's pick up Chinese or continue Spanish.
And then
I mean,
every-
start Spanish at Driscoll or continue Chinese. And at Pierce, it is continue Spanish or pick up Chinese.
and then at all other 6 schools, it's continue Spanish or pick up French.
Yeah.
Which again, from the curriculum standpoint, puts a burden on the middle school Spanish teacher at Driscoll, who's teaching beginning Spanish to 6th graders. She's the only one in town who does that.
The beginning, the Driscoll Pierce.
All
Yeah.
other
Pierce is
Pierce is
beginning,
beginning Chinese,
Chinese.
and there's not another, the other teacher is not at
continuing.
the beginning of the Chinese track.
All our schools offer Spanish K-5 except for Driscoll,
Driscoll.
yes.
and they don't have a choice.
Correct.
Okay, well, that's interesting. I guess I didn't have that. down.
You know, did you at all talk to anybody about the issue of, a number of our schools, as you're aware, have bilingual quote unquote bilingual, it's, a special program for Korean, for Japanese, for Hebrew.
What's the
It's
EL
the EL
home
native,
language?
yeah.
Yeah, the EL home language. Did you ever talk about with the teachers about whether that would make sense for, a school that has Japanese as their EL language would be teaching Japanese? I never understood why the
Wasn't that how
principals
we
were,
got
no.
Chinese at Driscoll?
yeah, well, they started with Chinese before anybody else did. So we did Chinese at Driscoll, and then we added the Spanish. We allowed each school to pick. And I'm
But the
not sure that
home-
was the smartest move.
The home program for Chinese for EL is at Pierce, actually.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
It was always
right. And that made no sense to me either. Why?
And I think this goes back to the first finding, and Thomas, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that we're not differentiating our programs for heritage speakers.
Correct. Right.
So if a student is
Same classes.
Exactly.
What their level is.
Exactly. So
Especially-
a heritage Chinese speaker is with students that are just learning Chinese
Driscoll.
at Driscoll.
Yeah.
However, it also allows them to feel good about themselves in terms of what, their knowledge, being able to teach other kids,
Well.
Some of them are also
Wrong
bored.
with
They're, yeah,
Yeah.
I think some of them are bored, and they're not learning to read and write, which is part of the whole language acquisition piece. And so they're not reading in their heritage language or writing, and they're sitting in these classes
I see.
where they already have the vocabulary.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Is that a timeline?
So the parents told us that they were not getting what they were hoping their kids would get. Those. All right, and let me move on to the last section with this, which is instruction. So we have this program in place. We do some assessment, but not everything. We have curriculum, some good, some not so good, not consistent. So how does that all play out then in the actual classrooms? Because that's where the rubber hits the road, right? We can say that teachers use some core instructional strategies that are effective in facilitating language learning. We did observe that the target language is frequently used as the language of instruction and to provide comprehensive input in many classrooms, which is fantastic. Authentic materials do support the language learning experience in almost all of the classrooms. Middle school teachers do facilitate community tasks for students and connect them to the interest of the students as well as current and prior experiences. Oh, those are the 3 things. So we're doing lots of good things when it comes to teaching languages. There are some pockets of excellence. And we do some of the core strategies that you would want to see. Probably not everything yet, but who does everything, right? There's no perfect world. So our recommendation would be for the program to use the Teacher Effectiveness for Language Learning Framework to prioritize additional high language teaching practices that can be implemented by all language teachers. Right now you have, like I said, these pockets of excellence, but they're not consistent. They're not intentional, and they're not even the same. So we have some rock star teachers, and we have some that are completely different, and then we have some other rock star teachers who are rock star teachers for different reasons. That's the first one. The second finding is, and that's the more one that if I were on your committee, I would be more concerned about, and that is that teachers' practices are often reflective of limiting beliefs and students' abilities to learn languages. Sounds really harsh, but let me explain what that really means. The schedule that we didn't want to talk about earlier does impact what's happening in the classroom, right? Not just that the schedule does it, but what has happened that has created now a culture within the teachers in which they don't have high expectations for their students. It's not even that they don't want to, it's almost they have just taken on this self-fulfilling prophecy. Oh, we don't like our schedule and therefore our kids can't do anything, which is not necessarily true. But there's a cultural problem for sure that needs to be addressed. Students' experiences in grades K through 5 are frequently teacher-centered. It's often that teacher talks, student talks, teacher talks, student talks. There's very little student-to-student interactions. And the learning experience for students in grade 5 are mostly limited to word level production. And I forgot when I said earlier, pause that question, but this is what this is all about. Because the curriculum is so repetitive and because we don't quite have high expectations for students, we just keep working at word level production. So it's a new topic, new grade level, we learn more words, but we don't actually get better at how we're putting these words together in community of settings. And so that's when we don't get our outcomes, right? So we're keeping students at the same level of proficiency for 3, 4, 5 years. And I can tell you that not just, even without having the data, I can tell you that just from having observations in the classrooms and from looking at the student work. So our biggest recommendation here is to provide some professional development to your teachers that allow them to develop a deep understanding of the active proficiency guidelines in order to make instructional decisions aligned with the expectation of the program. It's one of those things, and this is not unusual. This is a problem across the country. It's not taught in teacher education programs. It's not part of the core for many certification pathways that teachers are taking. This is foundational knowledge that teachers get a teeny tiny bit, and then they're expected to teach. But it's probably the most important things. It's kind of like I'm trying to compare it to martial arts. If you don't know what it looks like to earn a black belt, if you don't know what it looks like to earn a green belt, a blue belt, how can you possibly help other people earn a green, blue, or black belt? So just because I know there's a green belt doesn't mean I know what it looks like. And if I don't know what it looks like, I can't help somebody else get that belt. And that's kind of what we have here. Teachers know about the proficiency guideline, they know the terms, but they don't have a deep enough understanding to help their students reach those guidelines or reach those proficiency levels. And again, it's not 100% their fault. So it's kind of the last one is kind of a summary of everything that has been above. We strongly believe that the effectiveness of teacher is directly impacted by limitations in the curriculum, limitations in the scheduling choices, the lack of grade level coordination, and district expectations. So I don't want to say, you know, I don't want to throw the teachers in the bus. It's like, it's kind of like, this is the world they're living in, and they're trying to do the best they can, given all those limitations. And so while there's some more specific considerations in the report, we do hope that you'll consider developing additional professional development opportunities that really are aligned to revise district expectations for lesson planning. I must say, I was kind of shocked and surprised to find out there wasn't any kind of district expectations for lesson planning. And it's, I understand there's history around that. But if you really do want to have a high functioning signature, highly effective program with kids learning CELO by literacy, I think it'd be worth having some conversations around how do we make that happen and what are the expectations for implementing lessons. And that starts with lesson planning. And that is our final finding and recommendation. The only other thing I want to add is that this is incredibly difficult to review in an elementary program because there are no there's no models around the country. When it comes to high school, you can find all kinds of models around the country. Elementary, you know, it kind of comes ebbs and flows. It comes and goes depending on how supportive the community is, how supportive the district is and wants to invest in it. Obviously, we believe strongly in the power of those things. Our national organizations and many schools in the country have made it clear that having those long articulate sequence is the key. How to do it, we don't have enough research around it, and many things have tried lots of different things. The Brookline model is very unique, and I think it has incredible potential. But that some work does need to happen to make some strong alignments to everything else. Because if not, you can make it a better program than it is, but it's still a standalone program, right? And I think if you want it to be really successful, it needs to be integrated into everything else that you're doing.
I must say, Thomas, you did an enormous amount of work in a very short time.
Yes.
That is impressive. The number of people you interviewed and the number of classes you saw. So thank you for that.
Plus, it's a really, really perfectly organized report. It's really clear. The sub findings flow really clearly from the main findings. Thank you for producing such a comprehensible, digestible report. I read it in the hour before this subcommittee meeting. Thank you for making it so digestible.
Since 2008, when we began, how many curriculum coordinators have we had?
Two.
Two just?
Yeah, Dawn was here at the start of the program, and I believe for about a decade.
Yeah.
And then Tanya has been here subsequently, I want to say 7 years, maybe 6, 7 years. Was it 8?
Yeah, no, that's great.
Thomas, could you say something just a little more about the lesson plans? Did you not see lesson plans, or were they not reviewed, or what? You said you were kind of shocked by that. I just wondered if you could say.
I did see lesson plans in various formats for what teachers, you know, because we didn't want to direct our findings, so we just told them this is what we're looking for. Give us what you have. Because I didn't want them to create lesson plans for something that they don't normally have. So some teachers had very detailed lesson plans, some had less detailed plans, some just submitted their PowerPoint presentations as the lesson plan, which was interesting. So there wasn't, you know, there's no common expectation. Yeah.
And that was a similar finding in the social studies equity audit, right? That is a
Oh, really?
beyond world language.
Yeah, and in the
Item.
NTC,
Yeah.
and the NTC report on just even our tier one. Is, and I think one of the terms that I think came up both in talking with Thomas and in those is sort of the fact that the autonomy piece from the history of
Yeah,
Brookline has gotten sticky here as well, because it's different from building to building.
And I tell you, in talking to the teachers, it's really funny, like they enjoy it, but they don't enjoy it, right? Some of them are like, yeah, kind of, but I wish I had this and this and this and this. And then I wanted to say, well, you can only get this and this and this if you also share, like if you also, because again, I do think a lot of the biggest problem are the cultural things that have happened. And there seems to be, I know we're recording, but this is really what's happening. some of the language teachers have embraced the problems of a few as the problem of the program. Does that make sense?
Hey, just say that again for me.
So there are some issues and they impact a small number of teachers, but it has now become the problem of the program.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you, what was the reaction of the teachers to this report? Is it anything?
I did not get a chance to get a reaction. I mean, we opened the floor for questions. There were no questions.
No questions?
No,
Not one question?
no pushback on some of
There was maybe, I mean, there was one or two questions, but it was not really like anything worse. Yeah.
No pushback.
no pushback.
But
I'm sure they,
what they are using, finding very valuable about this report is where we talk about the problem with some schedules.
yes.
That's the only thing that they're concerned about?
Yes.
Of course.
That's problematic. That's problematic.
That's what I meant by the culture problem of a few embracing it as the whole. But but as I'm telling you, that has impacted the curriculum work because Tanya has complained about that she cannot get teachers to help writing the curriculum. It has impacted the effectiveness of what happened in the classroom because now we have this woe is me attitude. And so, yeah.
Did you talk at all to the high school curriculum coordinator about how things, what happens?
We did talk to, actually we met with we met with the Spanish, French, and Chinese high school teachers. And we interviewed them as well because we thought, they're receiving the students.
Right. And what did you find?
They were very complimentary. They thought that the students they're receiving now are significantly more prepared for the classes than they used to receive before there was a KA program. There had some questions. There's a disconnect about the curriculum, which I can only speak from one side because we haven't seen the high school curriculum yet. I can predict what I likely would see, but there's definitely a disconnect there. But they were very complimentary.
Do they have any sense of which students had been through 8 years and which student, or 9 years, and which students had been just 3 years?
Yes, they did. The one thing they did comment about was the fact that the students who have been pulled out of the classes and that they were disproportionately overrepresented in the beginning language classes. That was the one thing they did. So that was, we used that as a data point to confirm what we already suspected was about that it's not equitable for all students.
Suzanne, Natalie has a question. She's online.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Who's that?
Natalia. You there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, Suzanne. Can you hear me okay?
Hi,
I'm outside. I just had a question. I'm still sort of thinking about that K through 8 being the same as 6 through 8. And I wonder, do we have any information about the kids who switch languages in 6, if they may have already known that language? Like a lot of European families teach their kids French. And so they might switch to French but the kid already knows some and therefore is not starting from scratch. Like, do we know that second language is really a from scratch language versus, oh, now they have the option for one that they already had some instruction earlier, or family? Like, is any information on that? Do we have any?
There's no information collected. I can tell you some anecdotal ones that I got from a principal. In one of the schools, actually the kids switched to French because they figured out really quickly that, oh, if we're all together in French class, then we're together for the rest of the day. So let all of our friends say French together. They all of a sudden had an increase in French, not because the kids wanted French, but because they wanted to hang out all day. And I think he fixed that. But so there's no, I'm not sure that we know that there's actual, we don't know.
Okay. I mean, I am troubled by it. I have kindergartners who love the Spanish program, but their 4th grade sister is pretty much at the same level as they are in kindergarten. And that to me is a little troubling. Like, our experience at Pierce has been that it is the same curriculum every year. They're doing the same thing. So I do think that the K through 5, yeah, like others have said, I don't want to disinvest in it because obviously I believe earlier language, the better. Anyways, sorry, I'll go back to listening, and thank you for the great presentation.
No, that's fine. ask your questions.
So I think, I'm not sure you answered my question about kids who come in later grades.
Mm.
What the recommendation is to do with that? How do you catch them up fast enough? Or is there not enough? I mean, they can catch up because it's just repeated every year and then it doesn't matter.
Right now, it is up to the teachers, and the teachers try their best. So there's no systematic approach to that. The beautiful thing, language class is different than most of the other classes that you're teaching, right? Because it is a skill area. It's not necessarily about catching up, but we can all be at different levels and talk about the same thing. So the example that I often use in teacher training is this. When I go to Starbucks, now I'm a non-native speaker of English. I was born. When I go to Starbucks, I don't say, hello, my name is Thomas. I'm an advanced speaker of English, and I can talk about these 5 topics. If you're also an advanced speaker and have also studied these 5 topics, you can talk to me, but nobody else can. Unfortunately, that is how lots of times language teachers treat their classes, right? They want to control it. So we must all learn the same vocabulary. We must use the exact same structures. We must talk the exact same ways. That is not how language learning has to be in 2023. And we're training teachers I have a group of teachers right here in the Senate that are learning about this. They can talk about the same things. It's just like, if I started this year, I may be using only words and simple phrases. But if somebody else who's been in the class for 3 years, they may already be using sentences, but they can still have a communication. They can still talk to each other. They can still learn. So it's definitely possible. And again, that's where teachers need to know that, have that really deep understanding of proficiency guidelines. It's the same with playing an instrument. Not every kid starts playing an instrument at the exact same grade level, right? And for some reason, when they get into a concert, when they get to an orchestra, they can play together harmoniously. Language learning is very, very similar. If you want it, if you understand it, and if you know how to teach that way. But right now we're doing the opposite. We're just like, let's dumb it down for everybody so these kids can catch up.
Yeah, I get it.
And so world language must be different than it was 20, 30 years ago.
It is, yes.
But it's sounding pretty traditional in our lower grades. Is that
It's a fair statement.
a fair statement? Yeah.
And,
I mean, it seems they should be speaking more. I'm thinking of language acquisition, in sentences and phrases and sentences, and maybe less learning vocabulary. I don't know.
So the reading and the writing that I think is missing a lot, like students engaging in the reading tasks, like with the writing tasks, that they're framed out, so it's sort of a fill in the word and it's still at the word level.
Thomas dropped a district when we were chatting the other day, Glastonbury, Connecticut. And on their website, they have student work samples, and students as young as grades 1 and 2 are actually writing and reading very similar to what you would see in a 1st or 2nd grade English speaking classroom. It was really wonderful.
And they can, because it's just they don't know, like a kindergarten does not know that this is the word for English or this is the word Chinese. They can acquire both at the same time.
Sometimes
It's just a crazy new thing. They just don't know. That's why you want to start early, right? Because they don't have enough interference yet that can stop that process.
But you want them to think in the language, not just translate everything. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's why it's so hard, I think, for adults, is everything we do, we translate if you're just learning a new language. But if you're really young and you're acquiring the language, it seems to me you want to be really thinking in that language, and they should be able to do that. Yet we know young kids can do that. Well, they say 7 or 8's a pivotal year, isn't it? Age 7 or 8?
No, for not having an accent.
Oh, for not having an accent.
Yeah. But you can, if you learn it young enough, you don't.
You have the accent, or you have the right accent.
You have the right accent. Right, just not that you don't have an accent.
Yeah, what else you want to tell us, Thomas? Because we're kind of going down different paths here, but we have you for a few more minutes, I guess.
Natalie, you raised your hand again.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, just a follow up on this, on the curriculum and the immersion. I know sort of like Berlitz programs, things like that do full immersion. Would you suggest that the curriculum in kindergarten first be that the teacher only speak in that language so that there is no, and the kids are forced to sort of figure it out, or is that not good practice?
Oh, that's our national recommendation. Our national organization recommends the use of target language for 90% plus of the time. Yeah, and in the effective programs that I've worked in, we even say it's 100%, especially at the lower grade levels. I can tell you, I went to go talk to a teacher once, and I was standing outside in the hallway talking to her, and there came a class of kindergartners came by, and they're tucking on the teacher's dress, and she said, Senora, you do speak English. I ever heard her, because in that classroom, she spoke Spanish. It didn't matter if there was an announcement, it didn't matter if it was the classroom teacher, she spoke Spanish. Like the kids did not know any other way. And that was such a great, she was super proud of us, and I was proud for her. So,
And just as a clarification, that 90% target language is a standard that I know Tanya talks about and like Rachel talks about as well as the coordinators. And so like, I think the question, right, is 30 minutes 3 times a week or 30 minutes twice a week of full in the target language. That's, I think the question is like, is that
Right.
And what do you say, right? Because we can talk 100% of target language, but we're only saying single words to the kids, expecting single words, and that's not an effective use either. So it's not just the percentage of time, it's also what happens, and that comes from the curriculum, that comes from the teachers, right?
There are full immersion programs, or they call immersion programs. Dual language, yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole different
That's a
process, because that's where your goal is to learn content. You just happen to use the language as the, yeah.
Do you have, sort of following on that model, but using it in a more limited way, would it make sense to teach math in Spanish, for instance,
I mean,
as part of the curriculum?
yeah, you can. I wouldn't necessarily say you're teaching math, but you're making connections to math.
Uh-huh.
You don't have enough time to teach math, right? But you can certainly make connections to math. So it would be a content connected curriculum, not a content, like an immersion program is a content-based curriculum, and you guys would be doing a content connected curriculum.
I see.
Science might be fun.
Thomas, I want to get back to an earlier point about one of the scheduling issues you encountered. You noted that the many are taking on the problems of the few. Are you able to estimate the number of the few?
I don't have it with me, but I mean, I have the schedule of it, but it'd be really simple. You just have to look at the schedules of every teacher, and I can do that again. I don't have them here.
It would be helpful for us, I think.
Yeah. And of course, that probably varies also from school year to school year, right? Because there's so many different factors that impact scheduling.
I understand, but given that there's been a lot of outcry about the scheduling to us, I think having someone else independently assess where the problems of the scheduling are and how many teachers that affects, it would be helpful for us to get another perspective on that.
Every schedule, I counted, and we had like a chart that had like how many classes every teacher had. And
would you mind sending us that information?
Yep.
Thanks very much.
I mean, I think we are aware that scheduling is a problem. It's very difficult the way we have it right now. To schedule somebody for 2 30-minute sessions when your blocks and 45-minute sessions, that just creates havoc to your schedule. They've got
I don't think I agree with you, Suzanne. I don't think any of us doubt that, but I think having Thomas's Thomas's eye on this without having been involved in the discourse on it would be really helpful for me, because it's just, since there's been so much heat on this issue, it would be interesting to me to see someone who's been a neutral observer and his take on it, which especially a more quantitative take on it.
Yeah, that makes sense, Steve. Yeah. So Jody, do you want to say a word or two about where we're going with this?
Yes, so I am very excited. In the next school year, Thomas is going to be joining us, working on 2 projects with us. He's going to be doing the 9 to 12 program review, because we felt that
Good.
because we
Great.
felt that this gave us part of the story, the K to 8 story, but it didn't give us the whole story, K to 12. And he and his team will also be doing professional development for our world language teachers on exactly those things that we saw at the end of his report, so that our teachers will become intimately acquainted with what a blue belt in Spanish looks like and what a black belt in Spanish looks like. So we're very excited to be bringing the Pearl team on as a partner.
So you're coming to live in Brookline, Thomas?
I mean, I enjoy, it reminded me of home, honestly. It reminded me a little bit of Berlin.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Oh.
I was surprised. I enjoyed it very much.
Berlin has more green space, I think.
It does have more green space, yes.
It's not that much bigger. I don't think Berlin, how big is Berlin?
What Berlin are we?
Berlin, Germany.
That's what I thought. I thought you were talking about Berlin, Connecticut.
I didn't say Berlin, Connecticut.
Oh, but you were saying it's
He
not-
said it reminded him of
I
Berlin.
know, but Berlin is so much bigger than Cleveland and Boston.
It may be space, but not, I don't think population. Well, I don't know.
And I want to thank Thomas. This organization has really, truly been a joy to work with. Anytime we needed anything, he's just an email or a phone call away, has been very responsive to everything we've asked. So thank you, Thomas. I appreciate you being here with us today. And I'm looking forward to our work together next year.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shane.
I want to second that. I get so grumpy with these external evaluations sometimes, and this one was just a joy to read. So thank you.
That's true. Sometimes he does get grumpy.
I get grumpy.
Anything else? Thomas, we could maybe give you 5 minutes.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much. Take
Thank you,
care.
Thomas.
Betsy, we don't have anybody else on.
Nope, there's been no one on.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Thomas.
Thank you.
It's gone. Wow, Jody, you just throwing these at you right and left.
That's okay. It's all the right work and it's all good work.
Okay, I think we're talking about just some kind of the curricular portions of the strategic plan.
Yes.
I don't know what that means.
So the first bucket, the first strategic objective on the strategic plan is about curriculum. And it is ostensibly to evaluate and identify priority content areas. Priority content areas is a key term because we can't do it all in 3 years. So identifying those that are in the most need of work to collaboratively establish, implement, regularly assess a cohesive and consistent district-wide pre-K through 22 tier 1 standards-based curriculum using evidence-based instruction. That's just what it is. Underneath our strategic objective, we currently have 6 strategic initiatives. And what we worked on yesterday was starting to action plan for those 6 strategic objectives for year 1 of the strategic plan. And so our work yesterday really focused on establishing what that PD structure and format is going to look like to help develop our educators and instructional practices and curriculum that are meaningful to promote equity and inclusion for all students. So really excited about what that could look like and what we're doing with that. We need to establish a clear standard scope and sequence that includes common assessments and accountability benchmarks. And as we were talking about this, we were really talking a lot about where do these documents live? We have scope and sequences right now. They're in a variety of different formats. They're kind of all over the place. There's no easy place for a teacher to go and say, what is my scope and sequence for English language arts in grade 2, that we just don't have that spot. So we will be evaluating different curriculum warehousing systems to kind of meet our needs and the functionality that we would like, and so that we can get those scope and sequences in a common format that can be easily accessible by people, and then continue to work to develop those. Again, part of my work, and we have a draft that I'll be bringing to this team, is to establish that curriculum review cycle. And that's actually goes along with our 3rd strategic initiative underneath curriculum, which is establish a collaborative process for the selection of high quality curriculum materials for all levels and disciplines. Again, we won't get to all levels and disciplines. A, we can't afford it. B, we need to prioritize in the next 3 years. So one of our focus areas I know for us will be ELA. We really need to make sure that we formalize a well integrated program with the research on the science of reading to really present to our students. So that's going to be one of the first up ones that we do. Our 4th strategic initiative is, this is a fun one, design.
So wait, hold on, I'm a little confused. There's a lot here.
There is so much here.
I mean, is this? Okay, what is number 1?
Number 1 is professional development structure and plan. To simplify it, it's a PD plan that promotes equity and inclusion for all students.
Okay.
Number 2, just.
Number 2 is scope and sequence with common assessments.
Oh, okay, all right.
Number 3.
Number 3 is
ELA.
selection of curriculum materials for focus areas. We'll be starting with ELA.
That's,
But you would do that before you do a program review?
Program review will be the first step in the process. That'll
Okay.
most likely be
Alright.
happening next year
All
for
right.
ELA.
for ELA,
Okay, all right.
Pre-K through 8.
pre-K through 8.
So the system is basically the same system we've been using. You're just sort of,
Just formalizing it and making sure that there's accountability for us to hit those benchmarks and to move the work forward. So one of the things that, based on my document review as part of my entry plan, is we kind of keep getting stuck in the same place. I have multiple documents that show really a lot of the same work, but it's like 3 years apart. It seems like every 3 years we keep getting stuck in the same place. My hope is that using the lever of the strategic plan, plus pushing on the correct levers and having the right focus areas, we'll be able to move that work further.
But I think, Helen, you were talking about the review process. So we're looking at the review, we're currently looking at updating the review process so that it's not exactly the same as it used to be.
okay.
Yeah.
So it's,
Where do we get stuck?
We get stuck right around the scope and sequence part. And we have all of these scopes and sequences, but we never get any farther into the development of the meat. So we have the bones.
Fascinating.
We never develop the meat to
Huh.
put on the bones.
but like with the math curriculum review, is that where we got stuck? Have we gotten stuck?
So with the math curriculum, and based on my entry, and I really haven't seen it in a lot of practice because of when I started, what I'm seeing we're doing is we're saying that the program we're using is the curriculum, rather than really looking at it around equity and inclusion and making sure that we're truly teaching a curriculum, not just a program. So and this is, you'll find I have this bias, is full-scale adoption of a scripted program is something that I'm very much against, because I think there is definitely an art and science to teaching.
Mhm.
I don't think we have to create everything from scratch, but we need to be critical consumers of what the program is and how we deliver it to students. And I'm not quite sure that we've done that part yet.
Jody, I think that you have those, I think that's why it's split out there, is how Jody described how we identify the stuff, but the what is identified separately.
Yes.
And the standards come in the what
The standards should come in both the what and the how,
and the how.
right? The standards are the what that we're teaching,
Uh-huh.
but we also need to make sure that we're teaching them in a way that the students are being able to access them.
That's the how.
Yeah, that's where the how comes in.
In the high school, they're just doing their own thing. Oh, go ahead.
Hi, Stephen.
Hi, can I ask a really basic question? I
Yeah.
feel like since it's really early in your tenure in Brookline, I don't feel too embarrassed about asking this. But given your last comment about not being too prescriptive about curricula, what in your mind constitutes a curriculum?
So I think with a curriculum, we need to have those backward design elements in place and really be planning from those. So that we're not, so if we're just giving, for example, the investigations test, we're just measuring what investigations is teaching. We may not be measuring mathematical practices. We may not be measuring all the standards. We need to be able to critically consume that to make sure that we are hitting all the check marks on that. I believe that a program is a starting point, but I believe, especially in a district like Brookline, where we do have so much diversity, that we need to be able to go above and beyond for the equity and inclusion pieces of that.
Okay, so okay, so you're agnostic on how, like, the frequency and kind of content pieces associated with the framework that the curriculum puts in place. I mean, you're saying we don't necessarily have to have textbooks or assignments, books, materials, videos, presentations that are prescribed attached to that curricular trajectory. We just have to have knowledge and skills and the values that we're implementing. I feel like a lot of people have a lot of, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you for giving me the opportunity to clarify. I
Okay.
think we need those videos and those things as well. However, what might come with a program may not be the best video to use for our population. So we need to be able to choose another video if we feel that way and kind of standardize that across schools. So yeah, I'm not saying that we don't need.
I don't have an answer. I
Yeah.
just wanted to get a sense of.
No,
what
I'm
you
not
were
saying
coming
that
to
because
this
I
with.
think they have their place, but I think we also, those are necessary, but I don't think they're sufficient, right? I think we need to be able to go above and beyond because any program is only designed to work for 80% of your students. We need to be able to move those other 20%, whether it's to accelerate their learning or whether it's to fill in gaps. We need to be aware of how to do that. And in a strong curriculum will do that. A program won't do that as well.
Thanks.
You're
Thanks very
welcome.
much.
Did that help? Did that
Yeah,
clarify?
I promise not to ask too many questions like that.
No, that's okay. I like that. Get to know who I am. Yeah, I get inside my brain. I like it. It's a scary place in there though. So 1.4 is school schedules, which makes sense, right? After everything that we just went through with our middle school review. And what we want to try to do is include common planning time within those schedules and provide consistent time on learning for students. So as you recall, our report showed that there's vast inequities in how much time students spend in different content areas. And we need to rectify that as a district.
Middle school or?
Across K through. Yeah.
Because we only have one high school, right? It's aligned with itself.
Yeah. High school does a really nice job aligning with itself.
Well, it didn't do the 950 hours.
Yeah.
So they.
990.
990.
990,
Yes.
sorry.
1.5, we actually probably won't get to till the end of the strategic plan, even though there's a real push to do it first, but we need a curriculum first, is to develop and implement report cards that are equity driven and reflect the standards-based curriculum. But until we have a standards-based curriculum, we can't have a report card that's equity driven aligned to a curriculum we don't have yet.
So how many times have we redone our report cards?
In the 9 years I've been here, really one
Only once?
significant revision, and that was really just a revision to focus it. Because when I started
There's- It
in
had a huge.
2014, it was burdensome. It was just unbelievably burdensome. And so we worked to narrow it. Part of what is a challenge there, and this is really the K-5 progress reports, because the 612 is a different story in a lot of ways. Each coordinator who was here at the time was essentially asked to revise their content area independently. And so we didn't do a nice job of saying, how does this skill cut across every content area perhaps? Do we really need it 4 times?
Mhm.
And then we have certain content areas, specifically science and social studies, where the frameworks have changed since then. And so there are things at grade levels that really don't belong there anymore. But to Jody's point, we haven't helped support with the curriculum.
Okay.
So like,
And
we can't ask teachers to teach a thing we haven't supported them with, it's.
And I think they're also thematic based, so if you change a theme of a unit now,
Right.
people are trying to change the language of the report card when actually the report card should be about what you're learning to do. So we just, it's too early, as Jody said.
So that one you'll start to see the action plans later. And then 1.6, I am really starting to get excited about, and I'll tell you why in a moment, but establish a common vision and structure for multi-tiered systems of support. So the next 3 years, we're really going to be highly focused on tier 1, but we're going to start thinking about what that system and structure for multi-tiered systems of support look like. And we have been invited to participate in a grant with the New Teacher Center, who does this through using liberatory design principles. And the New Teacher Center.
No, that I heard.
The
but
liberatory design principles, which really look at equity and inclusion as the foundation. It's design thinking with an equity lens is really what it is. So I'm excited to participate in this.
Yeah, the liberatory is what got me.
Yeah. Yeah.
From
it's-
Liberate?
Like
Yes, it's from Liberate. Yep.
Okay.
With the idea that, right, true inclusion is not just about like getting through, it's about everyone thriving
Yes.
while acknowledging their differences and letting people be their full
This
self.
is a huge amount of stuff
Yes.
that you want to do in 3 years?
Yes. That the community wants to do in 3 years.
Well, I'm concerned because I'm concerned it's maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, Stephen, you know more about curriculum and curriculum development, but it just feels like, and you left out the world language program review.
I did. That's going to be up there with ELA next year. but-
So that's 2. I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah, 1.3 is all the program review work.
Yeah.
It's all nestled in there.
So who's doing the work?
Well, that's what I was gonna say.
I mean, the coordinators?
Right.
are
So
heading up these?
the coordinators will head it up. We'll have, I think we'll continue to follow the Brookline pattern of having an outside consultant come in. I'm finding it to do the program reviews. I'm finding that objectivity is very helpful in doing that. And it kind of depersonalizes what we could do in-house. And I think especially around literacy, that's going to be really important as we move forward in order to gain traction to make the changes that we need to make. But as far as doing the work, what we're trying to do, and I should have brought a copy of the review cycle at our next meeting. I'll have it, but we are trying not to, and I'll email it out to you all too, so you can have it ahead of time. It's still in draft form, but we're trying not to do more than 2 things at a time. So with ELA, we're going to focus on ELA, which will involve the classroom teachers, right? And we're going to focus on world language, which will involve the world language teachers, but it won't be a heavy lift for both groups that are on the same point in the cycle. So we've tried to stagger how we're doing it.
ELA is pre-K to 12 or is just
Pre-K through 8,
pre-K to
Yeah.
8?
because then we get into the different class structure at the high school.
Yeah, Stephen.
So I agree with Helen. This sounds like an awful lot. So I just want to say a couple things. One is, I hope you don't feel any pressure from me, at least on this curriculum subcommittee. I can't speak for the rest of you to have an accelerated timeline on any of this. I just feel like I completely defer to you all on the timeline. Whatever resources you have to spend, I defer to your expertise on how quickly you can spend them. I'm just glad that you've got a clear priority list. I think that's great. And I want to avail myself as much as I can for helping with any scopes of work or reviewing any offers that come in. If I have any relevant expertise on that, I'm happy to contribute it. Plus, I feel like that's fun for me. The other comment is, I have two more comments. One is, I always feel like there's a lot of questions that come up at school committee meetings when this comes back to full school committee about the difference between program reviews, curriculum reviews, other kinds of reviews. So that plus the fact that there's such a clear roadmap that you've got right now, I would love to see, I feel like I say this, some version of this comment a lot. I would love to see you guys work with like Mike Chan, just to put on OTL's website, just like a little chart of all the reviews that are going to happen this year, together with some definitions. I feel like that would be huge for the community, just knowing what's on the docket for PSB and what it's looking at this year, because you guys really have your ducks in a row right now, and I just feel like it would be great for the community to know about it. That's it.
We do have a great team, so thank you guys.
Yeah, but I don't want you guys to burn
Well,
out.
that's what I was just, I think there's a little misconception about beginning the work and finishing it in 3 years. So we want to begin those things and get the structures in place and keep working on them. But there's no way that like everything we're talking about at the end of 3 years, I think it's that the strategic plan comes up for review in 3 years. And so we say, what did we finish and what can we move? We can keep moving the timeline as long as we're moving. But I heard that both of you and I was like, oh no, we're not going to finish this in 3 years.
Yeah, I think what you'll find is at the end of each year, we'll be letting you know,
Who's is going to be?
during the year as well.
Progression,
The
yeah.
progression of where we are and maybe asking for grace, but I don't think that this should be a document that sits on a shelf. I think that the whole purpose of this is to have it as a living document
Mhm.
for us to guide our work as a district moving
Might want to
forward.
pick something that's quick and easy, just to.
ELA, that's not
Quick and easy, but you might want to find something to get you started, you
Yeah.
know, so you feel
ELA
like.
kindergarten.
That can be problematic too. But I think pre-K you could do.
Okay, yeah, well, they're moving like
Yeah.
on their own.
Yeah, so we will get there and we will make progress on all these things. But again, to Michelle's point, the fact that these will all be completed in 3 years, I just don't think it's humanly possible. But we want to meet, and we want to rise to the challenge that the community set to us and move quality work in a way that makes sense for the students. So I think that that's really important.
So just to understand with ELA, your plan is to hire an outside consultant to look at what we're doing.
Yes. and then take their recommend.
That's gonna be a problem about who to hire, but that's another question.
That's okay. We'll help evaluate.
Robust process.
Yes, we're
That's
gonna
what the
write
RFPs are for.
an RFP very carefully.
Uh-huh.
And Stephen, I would love your input, and if you know some good people to send it off to. I've been polling all of my literacy friends.
Thanks. I'd love to contribute.
Thank you.
Says restraining himself.
He's doing a little dance.
Yeah.
on his feet.
So I think if we construct our RFP carefully for what it is that we're looking for, I think we're trying to send a very clear message, or Michelle has been trying to send the clear message this year that we are going to need to do something differently than what we're doing. We need to make sure that we're really hitting all the domains that a child needs to become a literate member of society. And, we need to make sure that those are in coherence and in synergy with each other, and we'll get there. But the reason, I know, don't start with small things. The reason that we're starting with ELA is partially because I've heard from all of you and the community that it's a real point where we need to make change in that.
And actually, we have made some changes.
Yes.
Right, so, we want to continue to give support because some of the changes I think have been good changes, and we don't want to just drop those. So it's a little tricky to keep the changes going while we're still in this evaluation
Yes.
process.
Except they may tell us those are the right places to have changed, and then they'll, I think
Yeah, I
part of
hope, I
what's.
hope we get some of
I-
that.
Yeah, I think part of what also will happen in these reviews, because I think one of the things that, like, when Helen was asking about it is from my experience here, which is short, I came in the middle of the math review, was the assumption is it's money to purchase curriculum and that's what you're automatically doing, but this is about being self-reflected and then saying what's working, what's not, and building, so.
But again, I'm not even sure there is one good curriculum out
And
there.
there probably isn't. I wouldn't even try.
Yeah, so, it's gonna be our program.
Yes.
And we've got some good components to it. We've made some changes. I think we should evaluate how those changes have gone even in this past year.
I agree.
And then,
And we have now some data to look at that.
Yeah, I-
Stephen, I promised I will send.
And I think the time on learning piece is going to be, and that's why I'm calling these program reviews rather than curriculum reviews, because I really want to look programmatically at what we're doing as far as scheduling goes, planning goes. What does the whole program that we're offering our students look like, rather than what does simply the curriculum look like? Because we could have the best curriculum in the world, but if a student's only getting 45 minutes of it at Runkle and is getting an hour and 10 minutes of it at Pierce, we're going to have disparate outcomes. So we need to look at it as a whole.
okay, so I don't know what people's schedule is today, but we're about done, I believe. Stephen, you want the last word in here? Okay. We don't have anything scheduled over the summer. How do people feel about that? Is that?
Do you need us for
Do you need
anything?
us for anything? Do you want us
Is
to?
there at any point that you would want to talk before you start rolling things
I
out?
would love for you to look at the curriculum review cycle. I would love to have one meeting over the
Okay.
summer if you guys are able to.
Yeah,
do
well,
that.
we're up for it, right? Stephen, so
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, but
Sure.
finding the date will be more challenging. But maybe Betsy, we could do a little doodle pool.
thanks, Betsy.
And
What's the lead time that we need to make it an official?
2 days.
Yeah.
Oh, is that it? Oh.
Yeah.
48 hours, not including holidays or weekends.
that we've got covered.
Well, but we're all here. Why don't we just find a date?
Well, we kind of.
I can.
I can.
Okay.
Okay.
My calendar. I mean, let's just do it.
Jody, do you have a sense of like July, August?
Yes, for me.
When you'll be ready
No,
for it.
me.
When you'll be ready to
Well,
have some.
That's what I was thinking.
I would like to do the end of July.
Okay, can we do the first week in August?
We can do the
That's
first.
better
week.
for me as well.
We can.
Oh, first week in August, I can, yes, I can. You can't,
can.
Stephen?
I can first week in August.
I can too.
Like the first, I mean, if we want to stick with the Tuesday, I don't know. if you want
That
to-
Tuesday's the first day of our leadership retreat.
Oh,
is it
Maybe want to do, yeah, can we do Monday, the 31st?
Not here Monday, I'm coming back.
Oh, I mean, Tuesday and Wednesday get better. I just think the first day.
Yeah, I might be a little.
I have your calendar open so you can see
Oh,
it.
thank
So
you.
you're yellow.
So,
Thursday, you said.
so
how
when
many?
is the leadership
It's
conference?
one, first, second,
It's-
third.
Wednesday, Thursday that week.
And it's currently blocked from 8 to 4,
Mhm.
but we haven't done a detailed
You're gonna
agenda.
be exhausted after that.
Yeah.
Especially the first week.
Yeah.
Sure. Could
I
you
mean-
do this, is that too late?
Yeah, we could do the 9.
What about the 4th in the morning?
We
Yeah.
I don't know, it's
Yeah,
a
Friday
Friday.
the 4th.
Yeah, Friday the
During the
4th
day,
is
yeah.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I could do that.
It's on this committee.
This is it.
Just
Three.
take
Yeah.
You probably give a fourth to us, but we don't have that yet.
Friday, August 4th, any particular time?
Okay, 9 or 10? 9?
Civil.
No,
What about you, Stephen?
What do you say? You say yes or no, Dave? What'd you say?
Uh,
Or 10?
sure.
Stephen, what's,
I was looking.
what's good for you?
I can move anything around on Friday.
Do you want to say 9?
9?
That's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Doesn't take up. See how easy that was?
Helen?
You're welcome.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Well, we're all here. and
Well, if
all
you
of
need
it.
us before then, let us know.
Yeah.
Thank
We'll
you.
rally the troops.
I have to say, I know this is only my second curriculum subcommittee meeting, but I really appreciate the 3 of you. You've been invaluable into my entry here. So, and thank you. Thank you all so much.
Trying to do, support this team. Right, Stephen?
Yeah, thanks. This has been great.
Yeah, no,
Okay, so I think at that, we're gonna review the, whatever, we'll get plenty of time to come up with, Michelle, start taking notes. and maybe what we want.
but you'll give us something to react off of.
Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
Okay, great. So we don't need the agenda till,
Yeah, plenty of time.
the first week of August.
Yeah,
Perfect.
until you have to publish it, really.
Or, you know.
Want to adjourn? I'll stop.
Yes, I vote to adjourn, so my second.
Ready?
Second,
Stephen, you vote?
I vote yes.
Helen?
yes.
I vote yes.
All right.
Is anybody else here with us?